And we're live. Today I'm here with Ty Smith. I met Ty, gosh, almost a year ago now at one of our workshops that he attended and was immediately impressed and always enjoy my conversations with Ty and excited to chat this morning. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing really good. Hope the same for you.
I am excited. As my grandfathers would say, any day above ground is a good day.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we were just chatting about hybrid events, and this is a topic that's near and dear for me, and excited to unpack this. I haven't done much writing or talking about it yet because I'm 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 a big believer that everything we do should be practice informed, and we should lean in on what we've seen work and build best practices and even understand how things shift in different environments so that we can bring the right solutions to the people. So I was excited when you were talking about, part of your parent teachers association and the work you're doing with AK Rice, how these conversations are starting to bubble and you're starting to consider some of these things. So let's talk a little bit about that and how your thoughts are kind of emerging right now.
So thank you. So I am the president of my local PTA. It's a high school PTA. It's not an elementary, it's a high school. And it's one of the top functioning high schools in the greater Washington, D.C. area, science and tech. Both of my sons are part of the science and tech program. Being the president, I get to see all this other stuff. March of 20, COVID happened. Boom. We were the first, I believe we were the first school in the greater Maryland area to have a COVID case. We went almost immediately to hybrid. And we've been dealing with hybrid for a long time. The county was very on top of it, making sure that we were there trying to provide the services for the kids, laptops, whatever. Now, 1 year in, they're starting to think about hybrid and what does that look like? As a matter of fact, yesterday I just got an email from a parent who was like, is there something going on with the Wi-Fi they can't figure out and the kids can't get access to all the files they need? Well, what was interesting, I found out from the principal, is that it was just technology. But what's interesting is how people are projecting their fears and anxieties into technology. I call it they have fetishized technology to deal with their own anxiety about whether or not my kid is getting all the sources that they need, all the resources. And so we're really trying to figure out, what does hybrid look like? My school has 2,600 kids in it. They did a survey. I think we ended up with about 500 kids coming back in hybrid. Every other day they're coming back with a Wednesday off. So they're only getting 2 days a week in. And so that tells me if out of 2,600 kids, only 500 came back, there's still parents who are trying to figure out, what does safe look like? What does learning look like? What does this hybrid experience look like? And I think it's going to be, even once we get most of the kids inoculated and back in school, education is not going to be the same. It's we're going to have to rethink about this idea of what we do when we get in the same space and how do we provide that education. My wife is an educator who teaches 8th grade math, and she has 8 kids a period. So I think she has out of 60 students, she has about 20 that'll come at any point during the day and be with her. And she's having difficulty because she says, I have to think about, while I love having her students face to face, she also has this whole group that is disembodied, right? That is connected, but yet not with her. And so how does she pay attention to them at the same time she's paying attention to the kids in her classroom? And then you and I had talked about, what does that mean for the boundaries of learning? And as a facilitator, what does that mean for the boundaries of facilitation, right? They get blurred.
Right? Yeah, and like we prepared this question earlier around, is it even possible to really include virtual attendees when you have live ones in the room together? And and especially in the beginning, because we're not going to have tested these things as thoroughly. It's going to be new ideas, new experimentation, and everyone's been locked up. We've been caged up. Yes. And so when we have the first hybrid events, there's going to be people in the room that have just been unleashed in the world for the first time, and they're going to be excited to see people.
Yes.
And so getting the engineering experiences so that they lean into the virtual experiences as well as the in-person, I think that's going to be Easier said than done.
Yeah. When I think about boundaries, I think about them with 4 dimensions: time, task, territory, and resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know when to show up. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm doing it at, and I know what I have available to make that happen. The virtual, once we went all virtual, it completely blew that up, because if I was in person, I knew that I was either available or not. I got up, I went someplace, I sat down with a bunch of people, I did something while I was there with some stuff to do, and then I left. The virtual space said, well, I don't even have to be in the same room. I am part of several organizations that deal with crossing international boundaries. I'm in a executive coaching program right now that literally is worldwide. I have a colleague right now who is when we do our small group work, she's in Australia, right? And so we get together, Australia, the UK, and the United States. And we literally have to say, so what day is it? If we set a boundary, what day are we doing Thursday and your Friday morning and my Friday morning and your Saturday afternoon? We get confused by it. But I think that what's going to happen is, in this virtual space, we're going to figure it out in some way. I've been watching some of the virtual tools that are out there to bring people into same space. I know there's one called wonder.me. I'm not an advertisement, but more about how do I geospatially, which is different than geography. It's my relationship to me, to space, and how I bring people together to do work that mimics my experience of being with you. I was telling you earlier, I belong to this A.K. Rice Institute, where our specific job is to study social systems. And when we do our conferences, I was telling you that I have blessed to have 2 screens, and I now have the screen where I can put 49 people on screen. When we do conferences in person, I am relating to another person, where they are spatially to me. What do they sit? Can I see them either my periphery or in front of me? Now I have 49 people that I can access at any one time that are unbeknownst to me, usually in person. You think about our facilitations, we put 50 people in a room. I got to turn my chair to look at people. Somebody says something. Now on a screen, all I had to do is just turn my eyes and I can watch them, and I can watch everybody else. And I am at the same time present and disembodied. And I have to do all kinds of mental gymnastics to remain there and to understand that they can't see me. I can't deal with them as, in our world, in that group relations world, as a projective object, right? I can't dump, oh, that's the loud guy over there in the corner who every time somebody says something, he waves his head and he just laughs and giggles. Well, now I can do that differently in person than I am on screen. And so how do we understand those dynamics are huge. They're going to be super impactful. And I don't think that we'll be going back to the world pre-COVID in post-COVID. It won't be the same.
I mean, the box has been opened, right? I think that our perception of what's possible, the software has shifted, awareness has shifted. I think that we're going to see some quite drastic differences between what we do right now to what we do in 2022. But 2022 will look nothing like 2019. I mean, we've crossed through the threshold, and it's not going to be the same. And the thing I'm super curious about is this notion of if we're going to truly engage our remote attendees, we need to provide software and systems for them to engage.
Yes.
And if people are in the room together, they're going to need to interact with those same software and systems. Now, we can put a mural on our giant touchscreen in a room, and that's a portal into the virtual experience. But we have to be really careful about how we think about and design those things and the outcomes we want to create, because there's not going to be a one size fits all where this is how you do this hybrid thing.
Yes.
It's going to be really dependent on what kind of experience you want to deliver and what kind of outcomes you're trying to drive to. So, for example, if I have a big touchscreen on the wall and that's the portal into the virtual people, you got to think about the fact that the virtual folks have this one kind of one-on-one experience, right? Because they're looking at a screen. It's just them interacting with this portal to everyone. Whereas it's a one to many, right? Is myself connecting in to the many of the session. Whereas the people in the room have this many to many experience. Like they're in the room, they can kind of talk to each other. So there's that dynamic. But then also everything they're saying has to be pushed in through that portal. Another experience is like if everyone has their own device and they're connecting one-to-one with everything, but there's this in the room experience. So there's lots of different choices that we're going to have to experiment with and think about what's going to suit our situation the best.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking this idea of one-to-many and systems and software. I would flip that. I would talk about systems versus software.
Sure.
We say,
yes, of course.
Don't solutioneer it. Love the problem, not the solution. And when I think about the systems, I'm thinking about those. I just had a colleague who just did a piece about mushrooms apparently have these subsystems, right? That what you see above the surface are just these individual pieces called mushroom caps, right? They pop out, but underneath, and there's a word for it, and I can't. It starts with an mnemonic.
The mycorrhizal.
Yes, mycorrhizals, rhizomic. Yep. So they are all communicating. Trees communicate. There are these things that are these connections that create systems, right, that have different outcomes. And my sense is that if we are planful, guys like you and other folks that are out there doing this, that we're thoughtful about the subsystems and the outcomes, we can then find the appropriate software to get there. That's the software create the outputs, but not the outcomes. And so I'm going to be fascinated by, to your point, a portal into an experience, right, that happens in the virtual space, but that is just part of the software. But what systems are we trying to develop? And so planning for that, I think, is huge, and we have to be very careful. I mean, you have to be very, very careful, because my sense is that we'll recapitulate divides, social divides. Remember pre-pandemic, they were talking about the digital divide. Well, now everybody is digital, but that doesn't speak to what are the grounded systems that underlie all of this stuff that we have on top. Will we create stratifications about availability to learn and to meet and to connect, based on I have the technology versus I really understand the underlying systems that allow that to happen. The A.K. Rice Institute that I'm involved in on the board of, we study social systems. That's what we do. And we are struggling with people who are, psychoanalysts and psychologists and clinical social, blah, 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 blah. We're struggling with how do we create experiences that allow people to connect, because that is really the important part. And I think the connecting is what we have to plan for, not just getting together and facilitate, but how do we create meaningful connections, which is very different than meaningful technologies to connect.
100%. I think what you're getting at is something that I preach a lot. It's a soapbox I often get on, which is,
yes,
if we just grab the technology and say, okay, this is the technology for making a digital or a hybrid event or an online event, and we just grab it and go, okay, how does it work? And we start plugging our stuff into it. We haven't been planful or designerly at all.
Yep, exactly.
We haven't considered the needs of our attendees. And now we've got hybrid and virtual. And also another thing we have to think about is, like, you always have to pick a primary design target. So is the in-person participant your primary target, or is the virtual participant? Because you can't focus on both. There's no such thing as focus on two things. So we'll have to plan for, we had to pick our target, and then we had to consider the others as a secondary attendee. And then there's just no way around that.
Yeah, how do we understand the customer? How do we get in and understand their needs, their wants, their desires, right? How do we manage that?
100%. And I want to and also, how does that correlate with our values and our mission and what we're trying to accomplish, right?
Yes,
So I just wanted
exactly.
we had a few comments here along the way, and I love this one from Jeffrey, and I think it'd be a great one to end on,
Yes.
Ty. So let's talk a little bit about how this notion around the virtual environments and why that's so important.
I really like this, and thank you, Jeffrey, for offering this idea of the body. My colleague that was doing the rhizomic exploration about what happens and how people are connected. When you are in conference with other people, you are embodied with them. I know that I don't know how you do your work, Doug, but I say that I want people to get up and touch the walls when we're facilitating. Touch the walls,
Yeah, sure.
do something, and it's the act of embodying the work. Miro, whatever ones, that's the virtual connection, that's a virtual space for it. But I would suggest that both of those are only avenues for competent facilitation to help people embody their experience, which means that folks like you and I have to work a whole lot harder, right? To help people sit in their bodies, to sit with another person. When you embody do body work with another person, and I know we have to close out, but I think this is important. When you do body work with another person, you are experiencing them orally, olfactorily, tactically, all of those things as you move and you touch them and you get experience and you watch their sweat and you see what's going on with them as something happens. The question, because that allows me to connect. The question is, how are we going to do that in a way that we can almost have smell-o-vision, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I can be with you in fellowship so we can learn and work together.
I love this. I love that word fellowship, and I think we should consider that word more often when we're designing sessions and events. So I'm gonna end there. I think that's a beautiful way to end. Let's all just think about fellowship going forward. And Ty, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today.
You too.
Always enjoy our chats.
Thank you.